Hello, my name is Arnie Mellison, and I'd like to demonstrate today how to cut a rubber roll or a rubber mat. And for that, I've been in this business for a long time. I've cut a few of them, so I think I know what I'm doing. But we'll see here in a few minutes whether that's true or not. The first thing I want to show you is the tools that we'll be using. Okay, the tools are very simple. First, you need a straight edge. You need some kind of a marker. You need a utility knife. One of these Olfa's works very well. It's got the replaceable blade, so you can just sharpen it and make sure that you've got a good sharp blade all the time. It also retracts so you don't cut yourself as easily. A tape measure and a cut-proof glove, just so that you don't have to go to the hospital and get a few stitches. Okay, there's a number of reasons, of course, why you need to cut a rubber mat. One is that you need to just make it shorter. Second, in this particular case, there may be a couple reasons. If you look carefully at the edge, you'll see that the edge is all crooked, and so we want to straighten that out. A third reason might be because you're trying to fit the mat into something, and so in this case we're letting this plywood be a edge that we want this rubber mat to fall into, so we'll use it that way. So we need to cut just a tiny bit off of this rubber mat in order for it to fit in there. So that's what we will do today. The steps for cutting this are going to be, obviously we're just going to measure it. Then one of the keys, there's two very important keys when you're trying to cut a rubber mat. The first is to give yourself enough room to work so that the rubber mat is actually laying flat. A lot of people, when they're cutting a rubber mat, they end up leaving it up in this angle position, and it becomes very difficult to cut. So you first have to move the mat out of the way, make sure it's laying in a place where it's flat. The second is, when you're cutting, you want to cut what's called an undercut. You want to start and then have the knife at a bit of an angle. So if this is your straight edge, instead of cutting straight up and down, you're cutting it at a little bit of an angle, so that the bottom is in further than the top. And that allows for a nice tight fit, and it allows for easier cutting as well. And so when you're butting two mats together, or you're butting it against a wall, lots of times there's a little crud in the bottom corner, and that'll help it so that the mat lays flat and it fits very nicely. So now we'll go ahead and measure and start to cut. Okay, so we're going to measure first one, put a little mark where it needs to be. Measure it about every 2.5 feet. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is move the mat so that we have a flat place and a little bit of room to work. So we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so we have our marks here, and we've moved it away from the curve or the area where it needs to come in. So now it's laying flat and we have room to work. So we simply put the straight edge on the mark. I hold it down with my knee so it's nice and solid. Again, make sure your fingers are out of the way. And I'll score it lightly once, then score it again, maybe 3 times, and in the final pass I'll be taking the material off. So one light score, second, you can hear we're through the material already. You could put plywood underneath if you wanted to. I lots of times don't. Because the little knife is self-sharpening. It's very easy to sharpen by just breaking the end off, and so so we'll just keep going. A light score, a heavier score, notice I'm at a bit of an angle. Throw the thing to the side. Make sure your fingers are out of the way if something slips. And we're done. Now we'll put the edge in and see if we got ourselves a nice straight cut. Okay, so you can see that we have cut the mat, and we have simulated the mat going back into the holding area. It's nice and straight, a lot better than it was. Let me also show you the cut. The piece that came off here, you'll notice that in some places we're cutting 1 inch of material, and in other places we're cutting even just 1/8 of an inch of material. It doesn't make any difference. The undercutting and a sharp blade are the keys to that, and of course using a straight edge. This is a 6-foot piece, and what did it take? About a minute to cut. The measuring and moving and so on is going to be the hardest. This material really is quite easy to cut, even though it does have the insert and so on in it. Have a good day and happy cutting. Thank you.